I've got an application. When I make a new refresh or whenever I make a new request, we're going to go ahead, hit an API, and get the conversion numbers from USD to GBP. Now, if I'm offline and I go ahead, refresh the app, so I make a new request, you see I get this alert, network request failed. Now, what I want to do, this is using the older context API. We can go ahead and take a quick look at this code by going into app components, alert, connect alert. We can see how we're using context types. And then if we look in alert provider, we can see how we're using child context, get child context. Now, what I want to do is actually go ahead and convert this from this kind of legacy way of using context to what this new one is. So what I'm actually going to do is just delete this entire alert directory, which has the provider and connect alert, because we're not going to need that anymore. So we can just delete this. We can ignore that for now. And I'll go ahead and create a new component. I'm going to call this alert.js. Now within alert, I'm going to import React. I'm going to import dropdown alert from React Native dropdown alert. And then finally, I'm going to import create React context from create React context. And this is basically the same as react.create context. And the reason I'm using create context is because the version of React Native I'm using is not using 16.3 of React or above, which actually has react.create context. So this is just a third-party version of that. Does the exact same thing. It's just available to anyone versus having to be on react.16.3. So now what I'm going to do is create a new alert context, and then I'm going to pass it an initial value of just an empty object. Now we can go ahead and say export const alert consumer is going to equal the alert context.consumer. And then for the provider, what I'm going to do is export class alert provider extends react.component. And then inside of here, I'm going to set up a render function, and that's going to return the alert context.provider. And inside of here, I'm going to pass this.props.children. And then I'm also going to add in my dropdown alert, which we're going to store a reference to on our component. And that'll be at this.dropdown, which is going to equal to ref. Now, without going into the details of the dropdown alert component, something that we can do is call this.dropdown.alert and this.dropdown.alert with type. And that lets us interact with this dropdown alert, which is available anywhere in our component. And to do that, what we're going to do is create two functions. We're going to have alert, and we're going to want to access all of the arguments that are passed to alert, or we want to pass those down to any of our consumers. And we'll do the same thing for alert with type as well. Now for the value on our alert context.provider, we're going to go ahead and pass an object, and we'll have alert, which is going to be this.alert. And we're going to have alert with type, which is going to be this.alert with type. So now if I go to the root of my application, if we look at index.js, we're already importing alert provider, and we're not breaking that API in any way because we're not relying on any props. We're still exporting alert provider as a named export. So this is all going to work exactly as we expected. So that means all we need to do is focus on our alert consumer. And basically, we're going to put our alert consumer anywhere we were using our connect alert previously. So inside of home.js, I'm going to replace this connect alert with alert consumer. And then we can go ahead and scroll down to where we've got our connect alert. And basically, this is also expecting a this.props.alert with type. And I'm going to try to not break this API. So what I'll want to do is get rid of this connect alert. And then instead of export default that, I'm going to say const connected home is going to equal to that. And then I'm going to export default a function. And inside of this function, I'm going to have my alert consumer. And inside of alert consumer is going to be a render prop. And this is where I want to go ahead and render out my connected home. Now, what we've got here inside of our alert consumer is the context that we previously defined inside of alert. So we'll have access to alert and alert with type. And those are the names we expect. So I'll just go ahead and use object destructuring to go ahead and pass all of those context pieces of information down to our connected home. Now, something else that's important for me to do is any props that have been passed to our home component, I want to go ahead and pass those down as well. So I'll just do the exact same thing for props. Now we want to do the same thing for our options component. So we'll replace connect alert with alert consumer. I'll scroll down to where we've got our connect alert. This time we're not doing any connections on this, so we'll just go ahead and return this options component, which is actually going to be wrapped inside of our alert consumer component. Again, we'll use that same render prop, and we can go ahead and return the options component. Again, we'll go ahead, pass all of the context and all of the props down to it. So now everything should be set up. We've removed all of our legacy context-related logic. Our application's reloaded successfully without any errors, and we're seeing that we're actually seeing that banner show up when we're trying to do something where we can't do that because we don't have an internet connection currently. And that in a nutshell is what it takes to actually convert from the old context API to the new context API and use that information in a variety of different ways.